This week, we finally get into the trench, and I show you how I modified it to add a docking bay. All right, here we are. So for those of you that follow this series, you'll know that Chris Bailey from CG Cookie had a tutorial on how to make the Death Star trench, which started this whole thing off. Now, the one thing about his tutorial was there was no curve to his trench. He only had an hour to make it. It was sort of a challenge. And so I wound up wanting a curve in my trench, and I came across Markham 3D, who had a similar tutorial, and his trench had a curve. So to be honest, I used both tutorials, a little bit from each one, in order to create this Death Star trench. And this was not the first version of the trench that I made. You'll notice right here, there is a docking bay. Neither of those tutorials had a docking bay, so I went ahead and made my own docking bay. And let's start with talking about that. So I'm not going to go into the tutorial of how to make a trench because there are better people than I to do it, but I will show you how I modified it. So if we go into tab here, you'll notice that these tiles right here are what is the emitter for my trench. This emitter uses the vertices in order to make the tiles. And so what I did was I just deleted some of these tiles to make room for my docking bay. Now my docking bay is not very exciting. I'm going to hide my trench right now. My docking bay is literally just a cube. I made it a little bit fatter. This was my first attempt. I didn't even delete it. I just moved it out of the way. This one I made a little bit more interesting. I think I added some, different differentiation in the size back here if you take a close look. I also added some planes that emit light, because a docking bay in Star Wars has like the force field or whatever it is to let you know you're not going to be sucked out into space. Now, my docking bay is very rudimentary. In Star Wars, they were sort of a hexagonal shape, had little corners here that weren't 90 degrees. Not that good at this point in time in my Blender career. And quite frankly, I was fine with that. So as I was learning, I just had to do what I could do and not worry about being perfect, because if I was trying to be perfect, I would never get anything done. My stars are a particle system, just so you know. There's plenty of information on how to make those. But I did use an actual particle system for my stars. So turning my trench back on, let's take a look at my TIE fighters flying out. There they come. Now, they're kind of hard to see as they move, but you'll notice each TIE fighter, I'm going to just zoom in on one here, has, can you see them? They're hard to see. They have lights attached to them. So each TIE fighter has a light front and back. Let me back this up a little bit. Now find it again. There they go. A plane here. This plane illuminates the TIE fighter. It's parented to the TIE fighter. Each TIE fighter has its own empty for control. And everything is parented to that. And the reason I did the planes for the front and back of the TIE fighter was because they were hard to see if you did not do that. So going back to my first TIE fighter's empty, let's go back to the camera and let's watch them fly out again. You know what? Let's just go to, let's see if this looks better. Not really. But there you go. You can see them flying out with their lights attached to them. And you'll notice down here, just 2 keyframes each. Nothing fancy. Each one has a little delay to it. The second one starts at, what is that down there? 13 or something. Next one after that starts at 24, and then, vice versa. And each one flies out, and I rotate them a little bit, just so it doesn't look out like they fly out perfectly. Coming back here, let's go back to this mode. As they fly out, you'll notice they all stop right here, just off camera. I tend to, once stuff gets off camera and out of camera range, I don't worry about wasting time trying to make stuff fancy that you're not going to see. Always keep in mind, if you know what your camera angles are, you can save yourself a lot of time and headache. And speaking of the camera, you'll notice I just did a little bit of movement on the camera to give this thing a little bit more interest. And that's it. There come my TIE fighters to try and attack my nieces and their X-Wings. Next week, I use follow path for the first time. And I blow some stuff up again. But the question is, do I stick with cycles
Or do I switch to Eevee? I'll see you then.